The cold metal bit into my wrists as my mother's voice cut through the terminal noise. "Finally," she whispered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Justice." My father stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding slowly like he was watching a condemned man receive his last meal. My sister Aurora had her phone out, recording everything with that smug tilt to her head she'd perfected over 23 years of getting exactly what she wanted. My brother Derek stood at the center of it all, his face a carefully constructed mask of sorrow that didn't quite hide the triumph gleaming in his eyes. 3 uniformed officers flanked me. One held my left arm. One held my right. The third was reading me my rights in a monotone voice that barely registered over the roaring in my ears. I should have been terrified. I should have been begging, crying, screaming that this was all a mistake. Instead, I looked past them all and watched the second wave of men in dark suits approaching from the security checkpoint. They moved differently than the officers who'd cuffed me. Their steps were measured, purposeful. Their eyes scanned the crowd with the cold precision of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. 4 of them, all wearing the same dark jackets with insignias I recognized from late-night documentaries I'd watched in my hotel room during those lonely business trips. One of them held up a badge. The lead officer who'd arrested me turned to look at them. His face shifted from professional neutrality to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. "Interpol," the man with the badge said. His accent was British, crisp and formal. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Derek Vance." My brother's mask cracked. "What?" "On charges of international money laundering, corporate fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes across 17 jurisdictions." The uniformed officer who'd been reading me my rights stopped mid-sentence. His hand dropped from my shoulder. The other 2 officers exchanged glances, their grip on my arms loosening. "I don't understand," my father said, stepping forward. "You have the wrong person. You need to arrest her. She's the one who—" The Interpol agent didn't even look at my father. He was already walking past me, past the uniformed officers, straight toward Derek. "Mr. Vance," he said, pulling a folded document from his jacket, "you are hereby placed under international arrest pursuant to the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty between—" "This is insane," Derek sputtered, backing up. "I didn't do anything. She did it. Ask anyone. She's the criminal. She's always been the criminal." "Stay exactly where you are, sir. No, you don't understand. I built that company from nothing. She was just the face. I made everything happen. I made her. If anyone should be arrested, it's—" "Mr. Vance," the agent said, his voice dropping to something cold and final, "we have 37,000 pages of financial records. We have 13 witness testimonies. We have 3 years of encrypted communications between your personal server and accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. We have the photographs. We have the receipts. We have everything." Derek's face went white. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Aurora's phone wobbled in her grip. My father looked like he'd been struck. "Everything," the agent repeated. And then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. The uniformed officers who'd arrested me were already backing away, their hands raised. One of them was speaking into his radio, his voice urgent and apologetic. The lead officer was staring at me with something that might have been dawning horror. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm so sorry. The warrant we received—" "It must have been altered," I said calmly. "Yes, I know." The Interpol agent was cuffing Derek now. My brother was protesting, shouting, demanding a lawyer, demanding to call someone, demanding to be released. But his voice had gone thin and reedy, the voice of a man who'd just realized the floor had opened up beneath him. "This is a mistake," my mother cried. "This is all a mistake. Derek is a good man. He would never—" "Ask him about the offshore accounts," I said quietly. "Ask him about the shell companies. Ask him about the money he's been siphoning from the company for the past 5 years, while he was making all of you believe I was the problem." My mother's face contorted. "You shut your mouth. You've always been jealous of Derek. You've always tried to tear him down because he was better than you." The Interpol agent looked at me. There was something like respect in his eyes. "Miss Vance," he said, "we'll need you to come with us as well. To provide a full statement, of course," I said. "I've been waiting for this call for 3 years." Aurora lowered her phone. Her face was pale. "What's happening? What is she talking about?" Derek was being led away now, his expensive leather shoes scuffing against the polished airport floor. He was still shouting, still insisting, still refusing to believe that the trap he'd set for me had been flipped so perfectly against him. But I saw the moment it truly hit him. He looked back at me over his shoulder, and in his eyes, I saw the question he couldn't bring himself to ask. "How long?" I didn't answer, but I smiled. And that smile told him everything. It started 5 years earlier, long before any of this. I was the eldest child in a family that never quite figured out what to do with an eldest daughter. My father was a self-made man, the son of immigrants who'd built a modest construction company into something respectable. My mother was a former beauty queen who'd traded her crown for a diamond ring and never quite forgave the world for making her choose. They had 3 children. Me, then Derek 2 years later, then Aurora 3 years after that. I was the responsible one. The one who helped with homework, who cooked dinner when my mother had migraines, who kept the household running while my parents attended charity galas and business dinners. Derek was the golden child, charismatic, handsome, charming in that effortlessly disarming way that made people want to give him things. He never had to work for anything. It was just handed to him, usually at my expense. Aurora was the baby, spoiled, demanding, and fiercely loyal to Derek because he was the only one who ever bothered to pay attention to her. I didn't resent any of this. Not really. I'd accepted my role in the family ecosystem early on, the way you accept the shape of a room you've been in your whole life. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who would be there when everything fell apart. And everything did fall apart. 3 days after my 25th birthday, our father had a heart attack. It was a mild one, the doctors said, but it shook him. He started talking about legacy, about succession, about what would happen to the company he'd spent 40 years building. I was his first employee. I'd joined the company straight out of college, working my way up from the mailroom to operations manager to vice president. I knew every part of that business. I knew the suppliers, the clients, the contracts, the accountants, the lawyers. I knew which projects were profitable and which were vanity projects my father kept alive out of sentiment. Derek had never worked a day in the company. He'd been too busy taking gap years, traveling the world, finding himself, while the rest of us actually built something. But when my father sat us down in his home office and started talking about succession, his eyes kept drifting to Derek. "Son," he said, "I think it's time you took a more active role, Dad." Derek leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual confidence. "I don't know if that's really my thing. I'm more of a..." "You're my son," my father said firmly. "This company has been in our family for 40 years. I need someone to carry it forward. You have the personality. You have the presence. You have the vision, Dad." I spoke up, trying to keep my voice calm. "I've been running operations for 3 years. I've grown revenue by 30%. I know every detail of this business inside and out. If you need someone to carry the company forward, I'm already doing it." My father waved his hand dismissively. "You're a woman. You'll get married eventually, have children, and then what? The company needs a man at the helm. It's just the way things are." I looked at my mother. She was staring at her manicured nails, refusing to meet my eyes. I looked at Derek. He was smirking, one eyebrow raised, waiting for my reaction. "Dad, I'm not going to. It's decided," my father said, in that tone he used when something was no longer open for discussion. "Derek will be the next CEO. You'll support him. You'll teach him everything you know. That's how it's going to be." I sat there for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything I'd sacrificed crashing down around me. Then I nodded. "Okay," I said. "I'll support him." And I did. For 3 years, I taught my brother everything. I showed him the contracts, the supplier relationships, the client management systems. I walked him through the quarterly reports, the cash flow projections, the risk assessments. I held his hand through board meetings and investor presentations and difficult terminations. I made him look like a genius. And in return, he began to dismantle everything I'd built, slowly at first. A reorganization here, a restructuring there. He brought in new people, people who were loyal to him, people who'd never worked a day in the industry, but who knew how to smile and shake hands and say the right things. Then he started to marginalize me, shut me out of key meetings, reassign my responsibilities to his new hires, publicly question my decisions in ways that made me look incompetent. And through it all, he smiled that charming smile and told everyone how grateful he was to have such a supportive sister. My parents ate it up. They saw what they wanted to see. Their golden boy, taking the reins of the family empire, doing everything right. They didn't see the numbers. I did. I'd always done the numbers. I was the one who'd built the financial tracking system, the one who'd set up the reporting protocols, the one who could spot an anomaly from 1,000 pages of spreadsheets. And in the 3rd year of my brother's reign, I spotted the first one, a payment of $300,000 to a vendor I'd never heard of. I looked closer. The vendor was registered in the Cayman Islands. The payment was routed through a shell company that traced back to another shell company that traced back to a private bank account with no visible ownership. I cross-referenced the date of the payment with my brother's travel records. He'd been in the Cayman Islands that week, on a vacation he'd claimed was necessary for his mental health. I closed the spreadsheet and sat very still in my office. Then I began to dig. It took me 14 months. 14 months of late nights, of burning the midnight oil while everyone else went home, of carefully downloading financial records before my brother's new IT team could put the security measures in place. I found $800,000 in the first year alone, $2 million in the second, $4 million in the third. Derek was siphoning money from the company at an accelerating rate, and he was using my parents' blind trust in him to cover his tracks. Every time a payment was questioned, he'd blame it on my incompetent accounting team. Every time an audit was threatened, he'd launch a reform that somehow made the numbers even harder to trace. He was good. I had to give him that. He was very, very good. But he wasn't good enough, because while he was building his empire of offshore accounts and fake vendors, I was building something else. I was building a case. I kept everything, every spreadsheets, every bank statement, every email, every encrypted communication I could decrypt with the help of a former classmate from business school, who now worked in cybersecurity. I hired a private investigator, an older woman named Marta who'd spent 20 years working financial crimes for the FBI before starting her own firm. She was expensive, but she was worth every penny. She found the photographers who'd been paid to make Derek look like a successful CEO at industry events, the ones who doctored the photos to make him look like he was leading the company to new heights, while I was supposedly holding it back. She found the witnesses, the former employees who'd been fired when they'd started asking too many questions about where the money was going. She found the paper trail that led from the company accounts through 3 shell companies to a Swiss bank account with Derek's name on it. And she found the communications, the encrypted messages between Derek and his financial advisor discussing the most efficient ways to liquidate assets without triggering regulatory scrutiny. Arrogance, Marta told me, handing me a thick binder of evidence. That's what gets them every time. They think they're too smart to get caught. They think no one's watching. I flipped through the binder. It was all there. Everything I needed. But I didn't take it to the police. I didn't take it to my parents. I didn't take it to anyone. I waited, because I knew what was coming. I'd seen the signs for months. The way my brother's eyes would flicker with barely concealed anticipation every time we were in the same room. The way my mother would glance at him before speaking to me. The way my father had stopped looking at me altogether. They were building a case against me too. I just didn't know exactly what form it would take. The first sign was the performance review. 3 years into Derek's reign, he called me into his office and told me my position was being restructured. Nothing personal, he said, leaning back in the chair that used to be mine. We're just making some changes at the executive level. You understand how it is. You're firing me. Not firing. We're offering you a generous severance package. You can take some time off, figure out what you want to do next. Maybe start your own business. You were always good at that. I stared at him. There was a photograph on his desk, a picture of our parents at their 40th anniversary party. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was happy. I hadn't been invited to that party. They'll support you, Derek said, reading my thoughts. Mom and Dad, they'll make sure you're taken care of. You're still family after all. Family, I repeated. Of course, he smiled. Family is everything. I took the severance package. It was generous, as he'd promised. But it was also structured in a way that would leave me with nothing if I tried to contest the terms. He was cutting me off, completely, leaving me with just enough to start over, but not enough to fight back. And he'd done it all with a smile. I went home that night and looked at the binder Marta had compiled. I could end him with this. I could burn him to the ground, but I didn't. I called Marta instead. How long will it take to gather the rest? I asked. What rest? The rest of the evidence. The international stuff. I need to make sure there's no way out for him. No diplomatic immunity, no extraditions, no plea deals. I need him to go down completely. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. You're talking about Interpol, Marta said slowly. You're talking about federal charges. I'm talking about making sure that when the door closes on him, it stays closed. Another pause, then a soft laugh. You really are your father's daughter, she said. You have the same cold streak. The comment stung. But it was also true. I'd learned from the best. The second sign came 6 months later. I'd been out of the company for half a year. I'd used the time to rebuild, to take a consulting contract that had paid well enough to keep me afloat, to slowly piece my life back together after years of being defined by my family's expectations. I was actually starting to feel okay when my mother called. Your father and I need to speak with you, she said. There was something in her voice that made my stomach drop. About what? Just come to the house. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock, I went. They were all there. My parents, Derek, Aurora. They sat in the living room like they were awaiting a verdict, their faces grave and purposeful. Sit down, my father said. He didn't stand up to greet me. He didn't even make eye contact. I sat. We've noticed some irregularities in the company accounts, my father began. Payments that don't make sense, vendors that don't exist, money that seems to have disappeared. I felt a strange thrill run through me. Finally they'd found the evidence. Finally they were going to confront Derek. I don't understand, I said carefully. What kind of irregularities? Financial irregularities. My mother's voice was cold. The kind that have been going on for years. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his hands, refusing to meet my eyes, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his fingers. He knew. He knew I knew, but he wasn't the one they were looking at. After a thorough investigation, my father said, We've determined that the missing funds can only be traced to one source. He finally looked up at me. You. The word hung in the air like a grenade. I'm sorry, I said. The money, Grace. It's been disappearing for years, and you were the only one with the access, the knowledge, the opportunity. Derek has gone over the records. Everything points to you. That's not true. Derek has written a full report. He's been working on it for months. I turned to my brother. Derek, tell them what you've been doing. He looked up, and I saw the mask slip for just a moment. Beneath the sorrow, beneath the disappointment, there was pure, unadulterated triumph. Grace, he said, his voice full of fake compassion. I never wanted it to come to this. You're my sister. But I can't cover for you anymore. The company is everything to Mom and Dad. I have to protect it. You're framing me. Framing you? My mother laughed. Don't be ridiculous. Derek has spent months trying to cover up for you, trying to find another explanation. But the evidence is irrefutable. You stole from this family. I'm not the one who stole. Then show us the proof." My father leaned forward, his eyes burning. "Show us that this is all a mistake. If you can prove your innocence, we'll—" "How can I prove my innocence when the evidence has been manufactured by him?" "Enough." My mother stood up. "We've given you every opportunity. We've given you the benefit of the doubt. But you've shown us exactly who you are. You've always been jealous of Derek. You've always resented him for being the one your father chose. And now you've tried to destroy everything he built." "He didn't build anything," I said quietly. "I built it. Every contract, every client, every system. I built it all, and he took it from me. And now you're going to pay," Derek said, his voice hardening. "You're going to return every penny you stole, and you're going to resign your position at the company forever. Or we'll press charges." "You won't press charges," I said, "because if you do, the truth will come out. Try us." I looked at them all, my family, sitting in judgment of me. My mother, who'd never seen me as anything but a stepping stone. My father, who'd given everything to a son who didn't deserve it. My brother, who was about to be utterly destroyed by his own arrogance. And my sister, recording everything on her phone, hoping this would go viral. "Fine," I said, standing up. "If that's how you want to play this, I'll see you in court." I walked out of the house and never looked back. Marta called me 3 weeks later. "It's worse than we thought," she said. "He's not just framing you. He's been setting you up for years. There are multiple accounts in your name, forged signatures, fabricated transactions. He's got a paper trail that would send an innocent person to prison for decades." "Can you prove it's him?" "Already have. The forgeries are sloppy. He used the same financial advisor for everything, and the man has no loyalty. He's already agreed to testify." "How long?" 6 months, maybe less. We need to make sure everything is in place before we go to the authorities. One mistake and he'll walk. Then we take our time." I should have been angry. I should have been devastated. But I wasn't. I was calm, because I'd spent my whole life being underestimated. I'd spent my whole life being told I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to be taken seriously. And now my brother was about to learn exactly how dangerous it is to underestimate a quiet person. The next 18 months were the longest of my life. I went to work. I built my consulting business. I made new friends, new connections, built a life that had nothing to do with the family that had betrayed me. And in my spare time, I gathered more evidence. Marta had given me a list of everything we needed: the financial records, the witness testimonies, the encrypted communications, the forensic accounting reports. I checked them off one by one like items on a shopping list. Derek, meanwhile, was living his best life. He'd taken full control of the company. My parents had given him everything, including the house I'd grown up in, the vacation home in the Hamptons, the trust fund my grandmother had set aside for me. He'd even taken my name off the family records. According to the Vance family, I'd never existed. The one thing he didn't have was my proof. And by the time he finally realized I had it, it was far too late. It happened at a family dinner. I know. Who would be stupid enough to invite the person they've betrayed to a family dinner? Derek, apparently, because he was gloating. My mother had set it all up, a reconciliation dinner to heal the family wounds. But I knew what it really was. It was a victory lap. Derek had won, and they all wanted me to see it. I almost didn't go. But Marta convinced me. "Wear a wire," she said. "Get him to confess on tape. It'll be the final nail in his coffin." I wore the wire. The dinner was in a private room at the same restaurant where my parents had celebrated Derek's first anniversaries as CEO. The room was decked out in champagne and flowers, and there, in the center of it all, was my brother. He was radiant. He was triumphant. He was everything I'd never been. "Grace," he stood up to greet me, his arms open wide. "I'm so glad you came." "Let's not pretend," I said, taking my seat. "We both know why I'm here. I don't know what you're talking about." He sat back down, his smile never faltering. "I just want to make things right. We're family, after all, family. I laughed. That word doesn't mean what you think it means. The dinner was excruciating. My parents talked about the company, the new deals, the quarterly bonuses. They talked about Derek as if he were a conquering hero, and me as if I were a distant relative who'd been invited out of pity. But my brother was paying attention. He knew I hadn't given up. He knew I wouldn't be at this dinner unless I had something planned. "Grace," he said, leaning close to me as the waiter poured the wine, "let me give you some advice. You don't want to fight me. You can't win. I'm too good at this." "You think so?" "I know so," he grinned. "You can't prove anything. Every piece of evidence you think you have, I've already neutralized. You're going to lose everything. The house, the money, your reputation, everything. And there's nothing you can do about it." "Is that a confession?" "It's a promise." He raised his glass to family. "You know," I said, not raising my glass, "I've been recording this entire conversation." His face went pale. "Relax," I said. "I'm not going to do anything with it. The tape isn't the real evidence anyway. It's just a souvenir." "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say I've been busy for the past 2 years. I've been gathering evidence, making copies, keeping records. Everything you thought you'd hidden, I found. Everything you thought you'd buried, I dug up." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I smiled. "You've been stealing from the company for 5 years, Derek. You've been embezzling millions of dollars and framing me for it. You've created fake accounts, forged documents, paid off witnesses. But you made one mistake." "What mistake?" "You were too confident." I stood up. "You were so sure you'd won that you stopped being careful. And that's going to be your undoing." I left the restaurant and never looked back. 3 months later, I received a text message from my father. "Come to the airport tomorrow morning. We need to talk." I knew what he was planning. Derek had obviously convinced him that I was running, that I was about to flee the country to avoid prosecution. But he didn't know that I'd already filed my complaint with Interpol. I'd already handed over every piece of evidence, every shred of proof, every document that would bring my brother down. The arrest warrant had been issued 3 days earlier, and now, on the morning of my escape, I watched as the trap I'd set closed around him. The airport terminal was quieter than usual when we arrived. My family was already there, waiting for me, their faces set in grim determination. "Going somewhere?" my mother asked. "Yes," I said calmly. "I have a flight to catch, but I'm sure you knew that, Grace." My father stepped forward. "We know what you've been doing. We know you've been trying to leave the country to avoid prosecution. Prosecution for what? Don't play innocent." Derek stepped forward, his eyes gleaming. "We have the evidence. We have everything. You're going to prison, Grace." "Really? Really?" He pulled a folded document from his jacket. "This is a warrant for your arrest. The police are going to be here any minute." "Fascinating." I glanced at my watch. "You know, I was expecting them a little earlier." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the warrant you forged." I smiled. "I'm talking about the case you built against me that has more holes than Swiss cheese. And I'm talking about the very real warrant that was issued for your arrest 3 days ago." Derek's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. "You're bluffing," he said. "You're trying to scare me. Why would I need to scare you?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a copy of the Interpol warrant. "I already have everything I need." My father took the document, scanning it quickly. His face went from confusion to horror. "Derek," he slowly, "what is this?" "It's a forgery. She's trying to frame me, is it?" I pulled out another document. "Here's the copy of the financial records I submitted to the authorities. Here's the witness testimony. Here's the encrypted communications. And here's the email you sent your financial advisor describing exactly how you'd set me up." My father's hands were trembling. "This can't be," he whispered. "Dad," Derek said, his voice desperate. "She's lying. She's trying to destroy me." "No, Derek. This time, you're the one who's been caught." The uniformed police officers arrived first. They were followed by the Interpol agents. And I watched as the trap I'd been building for 3 years finally snapped shut. "Ma'am," The lead Interpol agent was standing beside me now, his hand on my shoulder. "Are you ready to provide your statement?" "Yes," I said. "I've been ready for a long time." He nodded, then looked at my family. My mother was sobbing, her mascara running down her face. My father was staring at the ground, unable to look at anyone. Aurora was still holding her phone, but her hand was shaking so badly she could barely keep it up. "I'll never forgive you," my mother said. "You destroyed your brother. You destroyed this family." "I didn't destroy anything," I said calmly. "He did that all by himself. You could have stopped him. You could have come to us privately." "I did," I smiled. 3 years ago. You didn't want to hear it." My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I was already turning away. "Don't bother," I said. "We're done here." The 3 years after the arrest were strange. Derek went to trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with an additional 10 years added for the attempted framing of an innocent person. My parents tried to rebuild the family reputation. They sold the company to a private equity firm. They moved to a smaller house. They stopped attending charity galas and industry events. They also tried to call me. I didn't answer. Aurora, who'd recorded everything at the airport, tried to reach out to me on social media. "Grace, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Please talk to me." I blocked her and moved on with my life. I rebuilt my consulting business. I published a book about corporate fraud. I started speaking at conferences about the dangers of unchecked executive power. I made a new family. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd chosen. And I never, ever let anyone underestimate me again. Looking back, I don't think of what I did as revenge. Revenge implies something petty, something small. What I did was justice. Pure, unadulterated justice. Because the truth is, my brother didn't just steal money. He stole years of my life. He stole my reputation. He stole my family's trust and twisted it into something ugly and poisonous. And when he thought he'd won, when he thought he'd destroyed me completely, he forgot the most important thing. That no one ever truly wins when they build their victory on lies. So if you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, know this. You don't have to shout. You don't have to scream. You don't have to beg for acceptance from people who have already decided you're not worth it. All you have to do is wait. Gather your evidence. Keep your records. And when the time comes, let the truth speak for you. Because the truth doesn't need you to defend it. It just needs you to survive long enough to tell it.